Hello, welcome back to another video. So, today I wanted to talk about a character that I've wanted to talk about for a while. It's an evil version of Spider-Man known as Patton Parnel. Patton Parnel was introduced in issue 4 of Edge of Spider-Verse. When we first meet him, he is studying an ant with a magnifying glass and refers to it as a subject. He seems to be torturing the ant with a magnifying glass and then eventually squishes it between his fingers. So obviously there's something not right with this kid. After this, we see him in his bedroom. He is spying on his neighbor, Sarah Jane, as she seems to be getting ready for school. As he's doing this, we hear his uncle yell from downstairs that he better not be late again. We then see him on the bus as Sarah Jane asks if she can sit next to him, and we find out they are going on a field trip to a laboratory. Sarah Jane convinces Patton that they need to let loose all of the test subjects. Whether they're insects or full-fledged animals, she believes all of them should not be experimented on. We see her saving a rabbit as they sneak into a back area as he goes to save a spider. He comments on how interesting the spider looks because it's unlike anything he has ever studied before. He gets bit right as people burst in and figure out that they were in the back areas they weren't supposed to be. After getting busted, we later see Patton at home, where he's being yelled at and then abused by his uncle. Despite the fact he seems sick and is sweating profusely in his bed, his uncle still comes in with a belt and hits him. We also see from Sarah Jane's point of view, and she can hear what's going on and understands, and you can tell she kind of feels bad because she knows it is her fault that she convinced him to go in that back area and release the animals. We also learn that Patton has been experimenting on the neighbor's pets and killing them. We then see him crawling across the floor, trying to get to the fridge because he's so hungry. As this happens, we also see a mouse stumble into a mousetrap and get its neck snapped. He then proceeds to reveal sharp teeth as he scarfs down the mouse. Realizing that he has been mutated by the spider, he is very excited. We then see Patton figure out that he can shoot webbing from his wrists, much like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. At this point, his uncle comes home to find a weird webbing nest that Patton has created, and immediately goes to attack him again. But this time, Patton attacks him first, killing his Uncle Ted. We then see him at school, where he seems a lot more confident, and he's willing to confront people and ask them to fight, but in reality, he is eating them. At this point in the story, Sarah Jane comes over to his house to check up on him, and at first she's infatuated with Patton, even getting a kiss from him, but she quickly freaks out when he bites her neck, leaving 4 large holes. He then bolts, revealing his true, spiderous, monstrous form to her, to which she is even more horrified, as he says that he's going to mate with her. At this time, we see a portal open, and Morlun, who if you don't know who Morlun is, he is an energy vampire who travels through the multiverse, feeding on spider totems, aka people mutated by spiders, like Spider-Man. As Morlun comes in, he comments on the fact that he loves fresh Spider-Man and that he is a very potent totem. He then proceeds to kill and consume Patton. Sarah Jane, horrified, runs out of the room, and we cut to a little bit later when she's at her house, examining the spider bite on her neck that was given to her by Patton, with the 4 large holes, as we see a million tiny spiders crawl out, covering her face. And that is how this comic ends. I'm into true crime stuff, so it's cool to see a Spider-Man that, it's like, they always say with great power comes great responsibility, but what if he didn't have Uncle Ben, and what if he was abused and all this stuff? Not that abuse necessarily makes you a bad guy. I was abused growing up. In certain people, it can lead to them taking their issues out in a way that is not correct. And abuse usually begets abuse. I'm not saying always, but a lot of times. So I always found this Spider-Man really compelling, and it's the coolest, like, dark version of Spider-Man I've ever seen. Like, people bring up the ruined Spider-Man where when he got bit by a spider, he just got, like, basically a radioactive disease that also spread to other people and killed them, or the Spider-Man that merged with the Carnage symbiote, stuff like that. But this one was just so cool to me because it was such a realistic depiction. I like seeing a Spider-Man that's different from the norm. And I even like the fact his name isn't Peter Parker, it's Patton Parnel. And a lot of that's probably to do with the fact that Marvel was like, you cannot make a Peter Parker act like that. But I just think it's really interesting to see how bad a Spider-Man could be. So I've always been super infatuated with that Spider-Man. I think he's really cool. So ever since I saw Patton Parnel in that 2014 Edge of Spider-Verse issue 4, I have been thinking that it would be really cool to see him in either like an animated show or a live action show, you know, some kind of form in a TV show or movie. And while that has not happened, I did start watching Smallville, which I had never seen before. If you don't know what Smallville is, it's like a teen drama about Superman when he's growing up in Smallville, which is the hometown he's from in Kansas. So, I was watching Smallville, and like I said, I'd never seen it before, and episode 2 is called Metamorphosis. And in this episode, we meet Greg Arkin, who is a really nerdy guy, and when we meet him, he's playing on Lana Lang, who's like one of the most popular girls in school, and a lot of guys have a crush on her. And we see he put a box with butterflies in it in a room. Well, we didn't see him go home, and when he gets home, his mom confronts him and found his videotapes he was taking of Lana. And so we find out he's like stalking her. And we also learn here that he is obsessed with collecting bugs. He really likes bugs. Well, since his mom found those tapes, she's really upset at him, and she has decided that she's sending him off to military school. In response to this, he asks who's going to take care of his bugs. And his mom doesn't really answer. So we didn't see him go in his room, and he's got like aquarium, like terrarium things everywhere, full of bugs, all different kinds of bugs. And we see that today he has caught some fireflies that are glowing green. And this is because they were affected by the meteorite that fell when Clark came to Earth as a baby. He decides, since he's being sent to military school, and no one's going to be there to take care of his bugs, he's going to put them in a safe place. So he gathers up all his bugs from all his terrariums and puts them in jars, and then loads up his car and starts driving out to find a place to release them into the wild. And as he's driving, he takes a corner too fast, and one of the jars falls and breaks. And it just so happens to be the jar that has those green fireflies in it. We then see these green fireflies start attacking him, and he crashes his car into a telephone pole. Next time we see him, he's back home, and he's appeared to cover the house in like webbing and stuff, and his mom comes in, and he attacks her and talks about how he's now a force of nature, and he's going to do what insects do, and he's going to devour whatever he wants, and he's going to mate. And he's picked Lana to be his mate. So, he kills his mom here, and this does remind me of Parnel. But then he goes and he kind of sets up a date with Lana that's not actually a date. He just asks for help on his English paper because he knows she won't date her because she has a boyfriend. And then he sabotages her boyfriend's truck by like jumping on the roof and stuff and flipping it, and almost kills him in an attempt to get her single. But when this happened, Clark just so happens to be the area and ended up saving the boyfriend's life. Well then, there's this whole thing with Lana's necklace where it's missing, so she thinks maybe Clark has it. So she goes to try to find him, and in the process she brushes off Greg. Well, Greg doesn't like this, and finds out that she was going to talk to Clark, so he goes to try to kill Clark. And of course Clark is Superman, so he's fine, and he ends up fighting him off. So anyway, Lana ends up getting kidnapped by Bug Boy, that's what I'm going to call him, because I'm going to call him Bug Boy because they refer to him as that in the show. So, in Bug Boy, it's kind of the Bully Maguire thing. You know, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, how when he gets bit, he like doesn't need his glasses and stuff anymore. It's that kind of thing, on top of the fact he had like pimples and stuff on his face and they're all cleared up, and so he's kind of reminds me of Bully Maguire. For those of you who don't know, if you don't, Bully Maguire is just Spider-Man with the Venom symbiote from that third Tobey Maguire movie. But, so, you know, he's acting all confident and stuff. Well, he kidnaps her, and then her boyfriend and Clark come after her. Clark ends up confronting him. Bug Boy accidentally gets squished by a piece of equipment in a factory. And we just see a bunch of bugs run out from the bottom. Well, then we cut back to her boyfriend who finds her up in a treehouse. And in the treehouse, she's wrapped in webbing, which he rips off of her. And so we don't get a scene like the end of the other one where, like with Patton Parnel, where Sarah Jane has spiders come out of her or anything. But an interesting thing I was thinking about is Smallville came out in 2001, and this episode is, like I said, the second episode, so it aired in 2001. Well, that Patton Parnel comic didn't come out until 2014. And I don't think they directly copied it because obviously there's differences. But I wonder if one was inspired by the other. And that would be really cool if it was, because that would be like Marvel is taking a DC character who is almost Spider-Man and making him an evil version of Spider-Man. And I think that's really cool to think about. So let's go over how they're similar and different. So first of all, Patton has a abusive uncle named Uncle Ted, who he ends up killing. Greg has not really an abusive mom, but a non-understanding mom, and she doesn't like his habit of collecting insects, which I don't think is bad. People have different interests. If you want to collect insects, I don't see anything wrong with that. I do think she is a lot more valid than Uncle Ted, because like I said, Uncle Ted actually abuses him. And Greg's mom literally found videotapes he took secretly from bushes of a girl. So that is definitely serial killer and creepy behavior. So it's a lot more understandable where Greg's mom was coming from. But anyway, they both end up killing like their one remaining parental figure. And then they both have a crush on a girl that they're secretly spying on that they eventually try to mate with. And Patton kind of succeeds in a weird way because he like puts eggs in her neck and bites her, which is just weird. But they also both wrap their victims up in webs. We see that with both Greg's mom. They find her dead body in a cocoon, and we see it the way he wrapped up Lana. We see it the way he wrapped up Lana when he kidnapped her. And then whenever we're with Patton, we see he does it to his uncle, and he does it to the cat. It just varies different things. Their powers, they both got their powers by being bitten by a radioactive insect. In Bug Boy's case, it was like kryptonite-infused fireflies, and in Patton's case, it was a radioactive spider. Both radioactive insects that gave them their powers, and from being bitten. We never outright see Greg making the webbing, but we know he can because there's all the webbing in the house. So they both can naturally make webbing. So as you can see, they're very similar. And I think what was really cool about the show was, in Patton's universe, there's no other heroes that we know of. We just see him, and like I said, he's not really a hero. But we don't see any other superpowered individuals, is probably what I should say. And so it was cool to see a character that was very, very similar to him go up against an actual superhero, in this case Superman. And even if you just want to see like a fight go down between Superman and Spider-Man, this is probably pretty close. But anyway, I just noticed that they were kind of similar characters, and I wonder if maybe Patton was inspired by the one from Smallville, inspired by Greg. And I like both characters, and even though they do have their differences, I still think they're pretty similar. And so it was cool to see like a live action versus a comic, even though they're not directly correlated. One's DC and one's Marvel and all that. But anyway, that is about all I have for the video. So if you watched this far, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, check out my Patreon if you can. And other than that, just have a great day.